Welcome, welcome to the Empowered Team podcast. I am excited to be back with someone that we haven't interviewed, but I have gotten to know a little more recently in a really cool event called ROAI Live. And it's Nate, wait for it, Zeleznick. Did I say it right?
Perfectly. You said
Oh,
it as good
okay.
as I did.
I wanted to get that. So Zeleznick. And Nate has a background in martial arts and, more importantly, real energetic work, some spiritual work, and really helping people overcome, helping people tap into greater energies for themselves, especially high performers. So I think that this will be a great interview for our audience, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say. First, tell us a little bit more about how you got into martial arts, how you got into more energetic work. There's this thing called Vibravision that you've been involved with. There's so many things you've done. I don't even know where to start. So why don't you bring us into a little bit of your past?
Okay, thank you, Kari. Well, I'm Nate Zeleznick from Huntsville, Utah, a small town here in the mountains. And for the past 24 years, I have been one of only two American master trainers of a very special form of breathwork, meditation, energy development, like increasing the voltage in our cells, energy healing, and also what a lot of people would call superhuman powers. I call them future human abilities. Now, this all started about 43 years ago when I was about 5 years old, and I started getting bullied very heavily,
Mm.
physically and mentally, not only by the children, but also sometimes by their parents, because I was not of the predominant religion in Utah, and I'm still not.
Mhm.
And around the age of 11, I became, well, I started having a lot of suicidal thoughts. And in order to protect myself, it's like my soul did something very unique. Around the age of 12, I started having spontaneous out of body experiences. My consciousness would leave my body and I'd be able to travel and I would be able to experience so much more than this dense, physical, sticky form that we have while we're here on the planet. And that really, I really credit that with saving my life. And around the age of 16, after I'd been involved, I'd wanted to be a martial artist forever, a ninja and a Jedi. Ever since I saw ninja movies in Star Wars, I wanted to be a ninja Jedi. And of course, there was no place up here in Huntsville, Utah to train in martial arts other than, well, on my brothers, and that wasn't very nice of me. But when I started training, I found that there was a big missing part, and that was the internal, the spiritual part. Training in a strip mall martial art was wonderful for respect, discipline, manners, and things of that nature, but I really wanted the things that I saw on TV that the Shaolin monks could do or yogis could do. But of course, little town, not going to find that. And so I did train a lot in the martial arts. And when I was 23, I I'd like to say I dialed up a synchro destiny for myself. And what that was I ordered a course out of Black Belt magazine that guaranteed me inner power in 2 weeks, or I got my money back. And I was like, yes, inner power. I get chi in 2 weeks. I love
Did you
that's
order it
something.
with your sea monkeys too at the back of the comic book?
No, no, I didn't. But what I did is I got something that was even less valuable than sea monkeys. That was the little
Okay.
manual that came with it, and it was absolutely bogus. But it came with a VHS tape that showed Indonesian martial arts. Now, I had studied different martial arts through college and also other different dojos. I had never heard of Indonesian martial arts. And when I saw what these people could do, the way that they move, the different combat techniques, I was so impressed. I've never seen anything like it. But then I saw people doing something really unexpected. So I think everybody's seen people break a brick or a board. I had never seen anybody breaking stacks of steel or stacks of
Wow.
stone, barely touching it. But then, I mean, that was neat. And I was like, wow, okay, that's great,
Impressive, yes.
impressive. But what I saw next, first of all, put out my BS alarms, but second of all, really inspired me. And that was people who were blindfolded or even blind that could literally do anything you or I do. They were driving cars through traffic in Jakarta, like downtown. They were able to shoot targets out of people's hands. They were able to read printed material. And I thought it had to be a trick, right? Because I mean, David Copperfield made the Statue of Liberty disappear. I saw it on TV. But something inside, after all those out of body experiences and the spiritual, mystical things that had happened to me already, I kept thinking in the back of my mind, I wonder if Jedis are really real. Well, the next day, I watched a blind woman almost get killed in front of me. She was trying to cross the street, and her dog led her into the pole and not across the street. Now, this happened probably 5 or 6 feet off of my bumper. And Kari, I tell you what, it was a epiphany. People talk about having a inner knowing. And this was like a spiritual sledgehammer that hit me. It literally, I felt it in my chest, like, oh my God, I have to find those Indonesian people and see if they can help her. I'd never met a blind person. I had no connection to the blind community, but I had to find those people, and I did. I searched and searched. And this is in the dial-up internet days, so I went to the library because they had high speed, like 1 megabyte per second dial-up, like internet. And I found them. And I sponsored the very first demonstration of this art, which is called Marpati Puti, which in English, that sounds interesting and funny, but over in Indonesia, it means white dove. And I sponsored the very first demonstration of this in the United States. And when I got to see blind people do anything that I took for granted, including came into my house, they literally, like sonar, scanned through the drawers in my kitchen, knew where everything was, took everything out, cooked us dinner. It was a really emotional time for me because I knew this was a path with heart. I was going to help these people. But there was a caveat. They had never trained a non-Indonesian person in their history in 500 plus years, or about 500 years, only Indonesian nationals. And so I didn't have it in my mind that I'd be able to learn this, but I had to help them. And so when they were leaving, after we had done demonstrations around the country, they looked at me, and the chairman of Merpati Putih said, Nate, we want you to be the very first non-Indonesian person we've allowed to learn this. And there just so happened to be a former senior instructor, also a former special forces instructor, former Patiputi, that lived in Salt Lake City, less than an hour away. Out of three
Wow.
people, 3 people in the whole country that could train me, there was one within an hour. Coincidence? I don't think so. So I started training with him the next week. And after several weeks, one of my younger brothers joined me. And then together, we were trained and hand selected by the royal family heirs of Java, Indonesia, that this is the royal family inheritance of. We were given permission to not only learn it, but after a year, we brought them to Utah and they personally tested us. They inaugurated our school and they allowed us to open the very first outside branch. Now, to put that in perspective, when I first contacted Merpati Putih, they were the third largest individual martial art in the world,
Mhm.
which you've never heard of because they kept it a cultural heritage in Indonesia. But everyone
Yeah.
over there knows. It's like here, if you say baseball, everybody knows what you're doing.
Yeah, it wasn't about telling the world, it was about just their thing.
Exactly. Exactly. And maybe people haven't played baseball, but everybody knows what it is. That's what Merpati Putih is like in Indonesia. So I started training. My brother started training. We were able to advance through the ranks. We went to Indonesia several times on long training sabbaticals. So we would test over there and advance in our rank. And we were honored to be able to be trained directly by the royal heirs, as well as all of the master trainers, because they all wanted to make sure that the Americans got their special sauce.
Yeah.
Many of the special forces members. And for 20 years, we owned and operated one of the largest martial arts and meditation academies in the country. And then COVID came along and it decimated the martial arts industry to the tune of over 7,800 martial arts schools closed permanently within 6 months. And that's about half the industry. So ours was one of those. And so what we did is we pivoted to be able to teach in a seminar format. And we had a lot of plats, actually. The Platinum Partners, they were the ones who really saved our bacon on this one
Mhm.
because most of the plats were not down with the whole let's not travel, let's sequester ourselves, let's
Mhm.
not. So
Yeah.
we had plats come in, and a lot of them came and they loved what they saw when we were teaching the vibra-vision discipline. Now, what that is, let me just back up a little bit and say, we are an information system. We have all these different receptors in our body. the ancient Egyptians, they said that we have 360 senses, not five, 360. So what have we forgotten in the past 5,000 or more years that they took for granted? Well, they didn't take it for granted, but they trained for it. They knew what they could do back then that we've simply forgotten or not been allowed to express. Well, vibrovision is one aspect of that, and that's a term that I trademarked. And the thing is, it's a ability for us to use other senses to perceive the radiation of the different physical objects around us. So if you think about this, we have our basic survival five senses, but we have heat receptors, cold receptors, balance receptors, pain receptors, electromagnetic receptors. We have all these different things that are going on under the radar that our subconscious mind, which is processing, 40 to 50 billion bits of information every second, where our conscious mind can only do about 40, and it's all
Hmm.
on autopilot. So what this does in the Merpati system, whether it's seeing without your eyes, hearing from a distance, remote viewing and seeing things in another location in a quantum, it's a quantum phenomenon, which the US government has used in the CIA, or it's out of body travel, energetic healing. There's all these different things that the Merpati method helps to unlock in people. And so that's really how I came across the spirituality, but I love the fact that it's also based in science. And over the past 24 years, we were able to actually prove to some of the top neuroscientists, quantum physicists, regular physicists, medical doctors, and even blind people that yes, we can see with our mind, not always with our eyes. And while not everybody can do this, we don't know what your superpower is going to be, Kari. So let's say you're going to be a teleporter. We don't know until
Yeah.
you actually unlock it. It's kind of like the X-Men. We don't know who's going to teleport, who's going to light students on fire with their hands, who's going to be an amazing healer, who we don't know until you actually unlock. And so that's one thing I love about my business now is the integrated ascension method, because in let's see, fall of 2022, my brother and I decided we were going to part ways in our business because he wanted to work on one aspect. I wanted to work on more aspects and also incorporate a bunch of 21st century technology like biohacking or vibroacoustic technologies, brain training, neuroscience, also things like the BioWell energy diagnostics. And I'm also a certified emotion code and body code practitioner. So helping people to release trapped emotions and different chronic energies in their body. And that was something we just unfortunately weren't able to keep doing together. But I'm so proud of what we were able to accomplish over those 23 years together. And now we're just on different paths, but still have the same goal, which is to raise the consciousness of humanity.
So, so this is really powerful because I think that in a lot of ways we live in a day and age where consciousness, presence, connection, awareness, um, staying in the now is really challenging for people more and more.
Yes.
Uh, However, their attention is going all over the place. To bring us into some of how you just there's going to be some people who might be listening to this podcast who are going to go, well, I don't understand. Like, what does this mean for my life? What do you mean it's proven by science? What is proven by science? Is it that I have other senses? Is it that I can do something? How do I know I can do this? So if we look at that, so what, first of all, what was some of the, because I have a background in research and this is so intriguing to me because one of the reasons is because I know some people who have taken your courses and they'll come out of your courses and they'll go, I don't know how I did it. I don't know how it works, but I was able to blank. I was able to see where the bean bags were when I was blindfolded. I watched someone who could do this other thing when they would never have been able to do that before. So tell us a little bit about the research and tell us how and why you think that this will really benefit people in their overall expansion.
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, it depends on the person and who they've heard of, but there's a very famous neuroscientist named Dr. Jeffrey Fannin. Now, Dr. Jeff was Dr. Joe Dispenza's chief neuroscience researcher for 6 years. And he did all of the brain scans for Dr. Joe. So when you see people out there, I know there are a lot of Dr. Joe advanced retreat attendees former attendees, or maybe advanced follow-up attendees on who are going to see this. So when you see that thing with it looks like the crayons and the brain scans, he's the one who did those brain scans for Dr. Joe. And when he tested our athletes who can do the vibrational vision skill, he was blown away. He's like, I've never seen anything like this. This is unique in all the 4,300 brain scans. So he said, I've never seen this before. Now, I don't know what that means because I'm not a neuroscientist, but one thing that was really amazing is that he did give an endorsement that this is unique, that there's never been anything like this. Unfortunately, not enough people are able to do that skill to actually form a case study group, to have a large enough thing. So very, very few people can actually harness that ability. Just full disclosure. Okay. So people can do some, but to the point where they can read printed material, ride bicycles, shoot the targets, run through obstacle courses, very, very, very few people are able to harness that skill. But we also worked and showed this to Nassim Haramein. For those of you who are familiar with Nassim's work, he's probably the most brilliant quantum physicist on the planet, if not top three, definitely. And when he saw this, he was like, you're harnessing the vacuum of space and you're perceiving it, which is exactly it. Anybody who knows Nassim knows exactly that. That's exactly what he would say. And so people like that who have been able to take a look at this and go, wow, but it's been under observational conditions, some scientific testing equipment, but not on a level that we would have liked in order to have it really be quantified completely. And honestly, Kari, I don't know that it can be quantified right now with our
Mhm.
measuring equipment because we still have a lot of information that is in the universe that we don't quite understand how this works. I mean, we just found out there are aliens, according to the government, or at least unidentified flying objects. But then when we look into the quantum and we look in quantum healing modalities or AI and the quantum computing that is coming up, there's all kinds of interesting things being discovered all the time. And this is one that has been used, not just in Indonesia, but the ninjas had this hundreds of years ago throughout India. This has been demonstrated for hundreds, if not thousands of years, this ability to see without your eyes, but also other things. Now, that said, abilities on a level of spirituality are a distraction. They're not spirituality. They're doing something, not being something. So I don't really focus on the doings nearly as much as the beings and helping people become their very best, most ascended self as it works for them. Not necessarily impressing people with parlor tricks or things like that. No, if somebody's blind, yeah, that vibrational skill is so beneficial for their life. But if somebody can open their eyes and see, then it becomes just, well, yeah, all right, cool. And I'm not interested in, yeah, so what, cool, because transformation is important, but transformation just means change. I'm only interested in liberation.
What does liberation mean to you? So when you think of some of the people that you're serving, when you think of being liberated or spiritually expanded, what does that mean? And what do you think that people could benefit from in that realm?
Well, first of all, I am not a guru. A guru is someone that says you can only get there through me. I'm the one who has all this knowledge. I love to help people become their own guru. So when it comes down to their spirituality, Kari, this is something that is unique to every single person. Just like I can never tell what you see when you see blue. I happen to have some color blindness issues, so I might see
That
blue. You
was
might
my
see,
husband.
right? It's a guy thing. And
Yep, got the got the gene.
And that's an interesting and a very important thing to realize that there are so many roads to Rome. There are actually 8.5 billion of them, that this is a method. So the integrated ascension method, it's a method. It doesn't rely on your belief structure or your spiritual upbringing or your culture that you just happen to land on, land in this in the world. And oh, okay, I grew up seeing people do this. This is something you get to prove to yourself. And that's what a lot of our friends in the Platinum Partner community have had that experience to do, is like, whoa, this is amazing. I didn't know I could do this. But then my question is, now what?
Mhm.
That's still something that hasn't been answered. by my former company. Now what? And that's something that I love to do is have that continuing support for people because I don't know what, but I do want to be there to help you and hold your hand and help guide you with things that I've learned or things that I've come across that might be the key that unlocks what you're looking for, even if you don't know what you're looking for. And I say that because I've had so many experiences, including a near-death experience in 2007, that are indescribable. They're ineffable. So the thing is, how do you lead someone to that? There's no real way to duplicate that in another person. But there are certain things that, if done in a certain way, can increase the likelihood that they'll experience their own form of that. But like I said, blue, purple, there's really no certain way. So that's why finding the beanbag is important. And I also do teach a skill, that skill as well, but I don't focus on it as my only thing.
So for people who may not be they may not be practiced in finding their own spirituality, or they may have been in a very specific religious structure, so it's been kind of contained in whatever their energetic or their spirituality might be. Can you give
Yeah.
an example of what that might look like for someone in terms of them finding their liberation? What does that look like? What would that be? Give an example, because for some people this might just sound way too out there, might sound way too woo-woo for them. So what would be an example of a client, of someone that, or maybe yourself? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So I love that question because this is not something that is based on woo-woo or dogma. It's really not. The Marpati system can be proven in scientific terms, and it's something that you is an it's not observational as much as it is experiential. So here's the interesting thing. If I try, and this is something we always struggled with, and still to this day, it's hard to help people who have never tasted strawberries. How do you explain the taste of strawberries? The
Hmm.
very best way you can do is say, here's a strawberry. But you can say things like it's sweet, it's red, it is a fruit, it's very high in these vitamins, right? But that's an interesting thing. I'll tell you one story because there are many, many stories. I'll tell you two. The first one is a result. So in November 2022, I was in Costa Rica. I was training a group of Grammy Award winning musicians down there. They flew me in to teach them a little bit of breath work. And there was a gentleman there who could barely walk up a few stairs before he had to stop. And I noticed him, and right off the bat, I noticed his energy was very subdued. And when I talked to him, turns out this guy was one of the most famous big wave surfers in the world who almost died from COVID. He was, he actually holds the world record for being on a ventilator the longest and recovering. He was on a vent for 70 days and
Wow.
he was in a coma, a medically induced coma for 30 days, and he woke up on Christmas Day, 2021. Excuse me, 2020. Well, I met him 11 months later, and when I taught him the basic breathwork technique of the integrated ascension method, within 10 minutes, he was starting to get really emotional. And I went and asked him, I was like, Drew, what happened to you? And he said, this is the best I've been able to breathe since before I got sick.
Mhm.
And the next day he went and he taught me how to surf. And he went out and he caught waves for the first time since before he went to the hospital. So
He's, he's
that's
like, you teach me to breathe, I'll teach you to surf because it's my breathing.
back. And now he's back on it. And he does the things that I've taught him. And you can actually see his testimonial right on my website. But another person, and this is an important thing, in here in Utah, there are a lot of people that grew up in the Mormon religion who have left for their own reasons. Now, I think the Mormon religion is a beautiful thing. They're wonderful people, some of the nicest, most community oriented, most emergency prepared people you will ever meet in your whole life. And they take care of the people around them. But it's not for everybody. And so when people leave, a lot of the time there's a big void where they thought they were having some spiritual experiences, but it didn't resonate with them and they found out it wasn't so spiritual. So we've had a lot of ex-Mormon people come to us looking, searching, hoping that they could actually find that um, connection that they had been promised or they were hoping they would find but never found in their religion. And so this is a blanket statement because we've had dozens and dozens and dozens. It's Utah. Dozens of people come to us where they have a very strong religious upbringing and programming. And this helps people realize who they really are and what their real nature is and their real unlimited, eternal, infinite being is. And when they do that, I've had so many people just break down in tears in my classes, and they're like, "Oh my God, I am really fill in the blank. I can really fill in the blank." And their connection with their families, with their coworkers, and with themselves strengthens to such a point that numerous people who were suicidal because of leaving the church, they found a different way. They found a way to contribute to their soul in a way that did not go against their religious tenets. And whether
Yeah.
somebody was leaving the church or not, the integrated ascension method and the Merpati Putti breath techniques and this, it doesn't conflict with anybody's beliefs. It actually is, if you're agnostic or atheist, it'll work for you. If you're a religious zealot, it'll work for you because you have a body. If you don't have a body, I can't help you. But if you have a body, this does amazing things. And it's cool that it's individual, Kari. It's
Mhm.
not like you can only do this. No, this is the science of becoming unlimited, really.
If someone's not so let's say someone's not particularly spiritual, why would they want to explore this? If they're, let's for instance, they've never tasted a strawberry. They're all like, okay, well, you say your strawberries are good, but I'm not really interested in the strawberry.
Yeah,
What would be a reason that they might want to taste a strawberry, or
sure.
what they might want to explore more of a spiritual connection, and why the body is perhaps, in my words, that vehicle?
Yeah. Well, and it is a vehicle. Okay, so let's break this down, Kari, for a couple very, these are immutable. Nobody can argue with these. If they do, they're just disillusioned. There are several very important truths about our existence on the planet. Now, these are not spiritual beliefs. These are absolute truths. Number one, we're all here having an experience, all of us. Second of all, it's ongoing. Third, you can't shut it off. You're going to be having an experience, even if you're like, I reached the state of Zen. You're having an experience of having the state of Zen. You cannot shut off your experience. So then you get to ask yourself the question, what do I want to experience now? What would I like to have this be? And how is this, no matter what the situation is, how is this for me? How have I created this on a high level? Maybe I don't even understand consciously, but what is the lesson here so that I can then choose and make a different choice and create a different outcome, right? Why I mention that is because I am a total nerd. I will geek out with people on the science of things all day long. So let's just take the spirituality and take that woo part out of it. Let's say somebody is an atheist athlete. All right, cool. Well, it's been shown in studies in Indonesia that this particular type of breath work, which is, I want to make a full disclaimer, this is not breath work as most people understand it. If they've
Mhm.
done Wim Hof, they've done holotropic, they've done 5G breath work, great. This ain't that. This is based on hypoxia, breath holding, very specific body postures and movements that align the circuitry and the energy in our body. Meditations that anyone, even if they've had trouble meditating, can do and drop into heart brain coherence quickly. This is a method that works very, very well. So things like increased stamina, longevity, and I say longevity because the number one factor in living a long life has been shown to be breath capacity. And yet those other breath modalities, they don't increase your lung capacity. The reason why is lung capacity is measured and it's really determined by how much you can breathe out, not how much you can breathe in. And we specialize in that. So living a longer life, stronger libido. We've saved a lot of marriages, or actually, they have saved their own marriages because for both men and women, that aspect just goes through the roof, regardless of age. We've seen across the board. things like VO2 max, your ability to intake oxygen in your body and use it, your vital capacity and your actual total capacity for your lungs, your lactate threshold, meaning how long you can go before you hit that wall and you burn out and bonk, it goes through the roof as well. It to the such an extent, Kari, that this Merpati Putih breath work is used by every branch of the Indonesian military for the past 40 plus years because
So
it
are they measuring these in a lab when they after they come out? Or are these some things that you've been able to do with some of your athletes too in Utah?
so that is something that they have done and measured over there. That's why they've, really made it the standard for their Indonesian army and their navy and all.
Military, yeah.
Mhm. And but we, that requires a lot of money that we didn't have to do here, but we wanted
Mm.
to, and we did some preliminary things like biological terrain assessments, obviously easily looking at the pulse ox of people going up into the 9900% range and staying there for a long time. Things that are basic that we could do here, but no, unfortunately, we were not able to get the large scale studies we really wanted to,
Yeah.
but in Indonesia they have, including a mitochondrial activation, the powerhouses in our cell, the energy, and the acid base shift. So moving from acid to alkaline in your blood just by doing these exercises. So there is some, but the most important thing, Kari, is it won't hurt anybody. It'll only make you healthier and you feel the results very quickly.
And for for some of the people that you worked with, what kind of practice does this end up being if there's a prescription for it? Is it one person might be an hour a day and the next person 5 minutes a day, or is it something that really works best for all people as a certain amount, or what does that look like?
That's great. So I have a pretty standardized curriculum where at least 10 minutes a day, 10 to 15 minutes a day. Of course, if someone is, say, a triathlete, they're going to want to do an hour a day. If somebody is just simply wanting to not be as stressed, have better flexibility, not have as much inflammation, have a better attitude at home, have more tolerance, more, not tolerance, I should say more grace and less stress with their wife and with their husband or their children or whomever they're around, then 10 to 15 minutes a day at the start of the day is a good idea, and maybe about 5 minutes around lunchtime to perk their energy back up so they don't have that midday crash after lunch. If somebody is an Olympic athlete, then I have a very different, that's my elite training. That's where it's one on one with me, or I can train sports teams, and it might be an hour a day, and it will be, hmm, we'll just say this. Whatever somebody does, this is a supercharger. It really is a force multiplier for anything that somebody does in their life. And you can do it 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day, up to hours a day if you really wanted.
Amazing. And is this so you have there's a link that we're going to provide in the show notes, and it's iampure.energy. And do you have, are there links that people can find online where there might be an example of a meditation or a breathwork experience that you provide? Is there anywhere that they should look for you from a website or Instagram, or where do people find you?
Yeah. So, really, to get a very nice breath work and meditation exercise, my YouTube channel, the integrated
Yeah.
ascension method. I've got one right there. It's the DMT breathing plus the perfect breath cadence that will lead you through. You just lay down or sit down, close your eyes, you follow me, and you will feel like $1,000,000 and change at the end of it, guaranteed, because it harnesses our ability to really release dopamine and DMT in the blood, but then also there's a really neat breath cadence that I call the perfect breath because it's been shown to be the ideal breathing pattern for humans, which is 5.5 seconds for an inhale through the nose, 5.5 seconds exhale out the mouth or the nose, and just to continue doing that. And it works out to about 5.5 breaths per minute. And it's interesting because many of the different chants, the different religious, I guess you'd say, breathworks and prayers through many different religions follow this almost exactly 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out. So it's pretty interesting that for thousands of years, people have known about this, but now science is being able to catch up. And what this does is it moves us into parasympathetic dominance, our rest and digest, everything's okay. Uh, our blood pressure goes down, our heart rate goes down, our oxygen intake goes up because we're also breathing slowly, helps us increase our carbon dioxide to an extent, which is the catalyst for oxygen release. You can't take in oxygen without carbon dioxide.
Hmm.
And so that's something that we also in the integrated ascension method focus on very specifically is CO2 raising while keeping the oxygen very high. A lot of people, speaking of high, they can feel pretty high for a little while after these breathing exercises because their body is actually able to uptake that oxygen into all of its cells. Whereas, with a lot of the breath work out there, the hyperventilation, you are cratering your CO2. And that's why your blood vessels constrict almost 40% when you hyperventilate. So it's not necessarily done in an acute fashion. It's healthy for you. Done in a chronic fashion, ask anybody who suffers from anxiety attacks. The very best thing that they can do, if anybody out there is listening or watching and you have panic attacks, breathe all the way out and hold it. And then slowly breathe in, breathe all the way out and hold it. Do that about 5 or 6 times. Same thing if you have asthma. When you have an attack coming on, I know it's scary. I've been there. Breathe out, hold it out until your body is rebelling. Slowly breathe in through your nose. Crinkle your nose. Slowly breathe in, let your stomach extend, fill your lungs completely, and then exhale all the way out and hold it. Won't take very long for most people. I can't guarantee for everybody, but for most people, it's maybe a couple minutes to have things really calm down.
And that holding, do you find that a lot of people extend their capacity for that after they've practiced further for a while? Because I know that in my breath work, I've practiced various things, whether it's Kundalini breathing, whether it's box breathing, whether it is, I'll do very specific nasal breathing. I'll expand my nasal capacity after training by only allowing recovery through the nose. Like I'll do all sorts of different things in order in my breathing practices. So I'm curious about, what you see overall, especially when people it is that feeling that you describe. It's that feeling like, okay, I can't hold anymore. There's this tipping point or there's this almost panic point. What happens to them or what have you experienced for you over some of those holds?
Oh, without a doubt, the amygdala and the brain, oh, it's got the oxygen and CO2 sensors in there. It does not like this. Okay, so
No.
it's not an easy practice, but it is something that we can control. It is something that we can extend. We can push the yardstick out there farther to the extent where whether it's a hold out or a hold in, the world record for breath holding is over 24 minutes.
That's insane.
It is, and it's trainable though. So
Yes.
if you are looking for, say, the Buteyko method out of Russia, they're very devoted to the full exhale and hold out. In Merpati Putti, we do both that as well as a full inhale and hold it in with different breath locks where we're using our diaphragm in different ways to affect the energy and the pressure in the pulmonary system.
Mhm.
So it's something that over time you get to be more and more comfortable with it. And we've been saying for years that in order to get to heaven, sometimes you have to walk through hell, but it's
Mhm.
always worth it because heaven's on the other side. And especially if you're having a panic attack or if you're having an asthma attack, you're already in hell.
Mhm.
Might
Yeah.
as well do just a little bit more in order to get out of that.
Well, it's interesting that you describe it that way because I think that so many people aren't at that tipping point of necessarily an anxiety attack or a panic attack. They're actually living in this zone that's almost a purgatory or almost a zone of this low level of stress or a moderate level of stress where they're not full on in hell, where they're willing to do something, but they're living with this chronic stress that just is diminishing their overall capacity, diminishing their overall performance, diminishing their overall connection with other people. And if they have this ability to start to go, oh, wait a second, I can breathe through this. I can diminish my own stress. I can experience some discomfort and expand my ability to be in more of a parasympathetic rest or digest state. And some of the things that you're describing, years ago, I had uh, done an entire lit review and research on heart rate variability work. And so there's a lot of parasympathetic studying and how we recover and all of those great things. And it's physically, it is that work with the diaphragm that is affecting not only the amygdala, but also affecting the vagal nerve and affecting all the signals that our brain gets to say, okay, you're safe. Okay, just calm down and reconnect to everything that's around you instead of being so hyper focused on maybe one thing or one path or one hold because of the external factors of stress or whatever is there. It allows us to kind of reopen and re-explore what is around us in that recovery, in that calming, in that resting, in that relaxing. So there's so much there with just the mechanical aspect of breathing. And so I'm so curious about just your methodology, how you've pulled that together, and then you've added this meditation aspect to it that really can take people to different levels overall. And from my perspective, I know that the people that I coach, the people that I consult for, they're highly focused on outcomes, highly focused on what needs to happen, highly focused on the day-to-day, what needs to get done, the doing, if you will. And when people tap into more of their being or more of their presence to themselves or to and when I say that, I don't mean that physical, I'm in the room. I mean that I'm really connected, that's intangible, that's not about just being in the room. When they connect more to that, they feel more whole. They operate on a better level in all things, not just their relationships or their work or their own self connection, but in anything that they touch. So it's a very interesting thing that that you've devoted so much time and energy to. So we've got the I am pure.energy. People can find you at, is it just your name that they look for on YouTube? What else do they look for on YouTube?
Yeah, you can integrated ascension method. Yep.
Which is I am. For anyone who's looking for the acronym, it's IAM. It's I am Integrated Ascension Method. I love it. And anywhere else, do you hang out on Instagram that people can look for you and look for any of your messaging?
Absolutely. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, X. So yes, those are the main platforms that I'm on right now. Reddit as well, but limited on Reddit at this moment. I'm working on that. Yeah, working on that. But mainly
Excellent.
Facebook. So if you look for Nate Zeleznick, I'm the only one in the world. There should not be any other ones that pop up. If they are, they're fake accounts. So
The beauty of a unique name, right? There you go. Well, I love that you are looking to help so many people, and I love that you have created something that's so effective to do that. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing this information and sharing something that I think that it's just not, for a lot of people, it's just not something that they hear about on the day to day. So it's such a beautiful thing that you've been able to explore it so much more expansively and deeply, and then share it with others so that they can experience a better, a more expanded, not necessarily better, but a more expanded version of whatever they're looking at in their lives. Thank you so much, Nate.
It's an honor. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Kari. And I'd like to say to everybody out there, rather than have a good day, have a great now on purpose.
Have a great now on purpose. I love that send off. Thank you.
My pleasure.